Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jim Masters Show. It's so great to have you here on our entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series. We love when you guys are here, and we're so excited that we've got a very special guest joining us from Nashville, Tennessee, Susan P. Hunter, award-winning author and documentarian, and she's been working on an incredible stage play, 77 Letters, and a lot of other projects that we're going to talk about in just a second. Good to have everybody with us here. It is a pleasure to welcome you from literally all around the world. We say happy holidays. We are in the midst of the holiday season. Hope your days are going well. Hope you're enjoying the holiday season. We've been very, very busy, of course, on radio and television with our full-time work, but also with all of these great guests and all these episodes that we have had of our series. I can't believe that it's well over 2.5 years, and we've done hundreds and hundreds of shows for all of you. Thanks for all the love and the support. Thanks for sharing the links on your social media. A lot of people have been doing that. You know, you can do that directly from our YouTube channel, which is Jim Masters TV. You can click the share button. You can share and spread the word about our series, The Jim Masters Show, on your social media if you like, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on all those locations at Jim Masters TV as well. And thanks for all the private messages and all the levity that you guys have been sending, telling us how much you've been enjoying the show. When we started the series, a lot of people asked me, were we just going to do this during the pandemic? But we've been here consistently day in and day out with all of you and constantly getting new viewers and new folks who are discovering us and enjoying what we're doing here, connecting everybody, entertaining, inspiring, informing, and just having a good time on what we're doing, which is like a traditional talk show series, you know, with lots of variety, lots of different guests, celebrity friends, and folks from all different backgrounds. So thanks for being here. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and of course, blessings for the upcoming New Year as well. Very busy time. You know, we're trying to fit in the holiday shopping into everything that we're doing as well. And there's holiday gatherings. It's a great festive time. Our set, of course, continues to look very festive for all of you to put you in that holiday mood, holiday spirit. If you haven't been in the spirit, you know, we are living in crazy times. So hopefully whatever we're doing here at the Jim Masters Show for all of you, hopefully it puts a smile on your face. And we thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to comment during the show, we have what we call the JMS Lovely Chat Room. It's a cool place. It is the actual chat box, the chat area in our YouTube channel on all the episodes when the shows are on. And when the show is airing, you can actually chat amongst each other. Sometimes we get a chance to see your comments, and we can even put some on the screen. And if you want to go a step further and support our series, which there have been several of you who have done that, we appreciate that. You can do super chat, super emoji, super stickers. That's something that's in the chat section. You can see that there. That helps support us. And also super thanks, which is something you can do at any time when the show is on or when it's archived, because we archive every episode of our series, every one, almost 900, on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. So you can watch these as they're airing, or you can watch these in the archives at, you know, whatever time you want, morning, noon, or night, because we realize we have an audience that is international and watches our series, you know, all different times. We get all kinds of notes and messages from folks who let us know that they're watching from Asia and Australia, throughout Europe. They're watching in North America, United States, Canada, Mexico. We have a lot of folks watching in Australia, New Zealand, and South America as well. Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, Peru, and other areas in South America. I think it's so cool. And I think it's great as we reach our international audience. So we are going to welcome Susan to the show. She, again, is a prolific author and screenwriter and playwright and documentarian. And she's been doing this for quite some time. She's got some exciting things to share with us. You know, here's a little intro for you that has been prepared. You know, sometimes we spend a lifetime searching for an appointed mission, and sometimes it finds us. The latter is the case with Susan Hunter, who has found her calling among our beloved Vietnam veteran community. Not too long ago, Susan happened upon a treasure trove of letters in her own mother's attic. And that dated back to the Vietnam War. This discovery of her mother's wartime writing campaign led to a divine reunion with one of her mother's GI pen pals. and ultimately a jaw-dropping redemption between the GI and his daughter, 50 years post-war. Their epic story, depicted in Susan's book, 77 Letters, Operation Morale Booster Vietnam, garnered national attention too, having been written about in the New York Times and earning the Amazon #1 new release recognition. She has since adapted it to stage, recently premiering in Nashville, Tennessee, with 2 sold-out performances. The overwhelming response of healing resulting from the book and the stage play has also spawned into Susan traveling the country, memorializing the experience of those who intimately lived the war in Vietnam, military and civilian American and Vietnamese allies, then enemies. Susan is in post-production of her documentary series with the footage that she has garnered from the interviews. Susan is also dedicated to restoring honor and promoting healing to a most deserving population of veterans, aka the bravest generation. It's been really a labor of love for her, and one of those iconic projects that sometimes just falls into your lap for a really poignant and important reason. And that's what happened for Susan. And we're so honored to have her here to tell us more about not only this project, but other cool things that she is working on. Yeah, she's got a lot going on. I thought I was busy, but she's got a lot cooking. And we're going to share that with you here on the Jim Masters Show. So, live and direct coming to us from Nashville, Tennessee, let's welcome Susan P. Hunter. Susan, welcome to the Jim Masters Show. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim, and welcome from Nashville.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy holidays to you. How's the holiday season going for you?
All's good. I'm decorated, although I don't know if you can see too much of it. I got my decorations up. Thanksgiving was a little rough. I got sick, so I had the flu during Thanksgiving, but that's kind of typical after the premiere weekend. You know, a lot of stress building up to that and a lot of late hours, so didn't really surprise me, but all good now.
But you're good now, and
yep, back to the grind.
Did you get all your shopping done, or you still have some gifts to get?
No, I'm pretty much done.
You're good.
I like to do it well in advance because I don't like crowds. I don't like stress. And of course, with shipping now, everything takes so much longer. Yeah, I'm not about it. So I do it well in advance.
That's it. Exactly. Well, great to have you here. Welcome to the show. We've got our international audience. We appreciate everybody. Gang, if you want to chat while the show is on, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. One of the bonus gifts when you subscribe to our channel, and it doesn't cost anything to do that, is you can comment in the JMS chat room right now while the show is airing, which we appreciate. And also give this episode a like and leave a comment on the YouTube channel for us as well. We really appreciate that. So, Susan, you have been busy with 77 Letters. Congratulations on everything going on in that vein. But first, I'd love to know early on, were you always writing? Were you a kid that was always writing? Like I always did. I loved creative writing. I liked writing short stories, and then went into newspaper and journalistic background. But for you, when did the writing bug and creativity bug and artistic bug sort of bite you early on in your life?
Well, great question. I think I've always had this creative part to me. So I've always, kind of done a lot of little creative writing just as a hobby. Creative writing, I would write poems when I was younger and as a young mom. I dabbled in filmmaking again as a young mom, and doing things for my kids' schools and their traveling teams and whatnot. But I was really a numbers girl. I graduated with finance. And so I always thought, okay, numbers is where I need to be. And I kind of pigeonholed myself in that direction. And it wasn't until when I was in New Jersey, before moving to Tennessee, I was the chief of staff of the sheriff's office. And I had to do a lot of writing for the sheriff, and I was the public information officer. So I wrote the articles, I wrote all the marketing material. And that's kind of when I started to hone in on my writing skills and my passion for skills. I love the fact that, being a wordsmith, you could really, be evocative if you wanted to. You could be a sob. You could do, there's so many things you can do with words. And I started to get this interest in it. And so I became that go-to person for any writing that needed to be done for whatever organization I was volunteering for or working for. And then it really didn't happen as, okay, this is what you're doing now going forward, until I came across these letters and knew, and I don't want to give too much away, but I'd love to delve a little bit into how everything evolved. But when this became such a big story that it needed to be shared with the masses, I started looking for a co-author, because I thought, I'm not a writer, I'm a numbers girl. I need to find a co-author. But then COVID hit and there was no communication going on with anybody. And
No.
so a few people who had seen some of my writing of like small articles said, you take a stab at it. You're a good writer. And so I was isolated anyway. So I thought, well, why don't I take a stab at it? And I did. And I just grind, for about 8 months. And I had done a lot of prep work prior to that, because I figured whoever I was going to co-author with, I needed to do all the grunt work. So I had like 30 feet of scroll, and I had a post-it pad for every letter between my mom and this one particular soldier I showcase in the book. And then underneath that, I had color-coded post-it pads of the content of the letter. So I did all the grunt work, thinking I was going to hand off the writing part to an established author.
Right.
But the Lord had a different plan for me.
Right, exactly. Yes, you were going to be hands-on throughout the entire project because it's your baby, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's near and dear because it is a story from my family's history. This is a story that really shows so much. One, this is my mom, who was this unassuming hero. She always lived in the shadows of my dad contently. She was happy to give him the stage, and she just was there as a great support. And during the Vietnam War, she took it upon herself to, her gesture of support was to start a writing campaign where she would write generic letters to the commanding officers saying, I'm on a mission to ensure every GI gets mail at every mail call. And can you please give this other generic letter to whatever soldier did not get mail today? And that's how she started this, just with generic letters. And she personally wrote to 40 soldiers, but she was responsible for thousands of letters and packages getting over because she got schools involved and the church and Cub Scouts and all that. So it really it took on a life of its own, similar to what this is doing for me. So that's kind of how this whole thing began, with just her. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had 4 children running around, a 1-car family. Wow. Couldn't do a lot, but she wanted to do something. And she felt, you know what, this is not a yay or nay for the war. And it was a very controversial war. It's a yay for Americans. And I'm going to support these young men. Most of them, or many of them for sure, had just graduated high school and they were being shipped off. They didn't have a choice. They had to serve. You either go to jail, you flee the country for the rest of your life, or you serve. Right. And she just really wanted to support them. So that's kind of how it all began. And then it evolved into, fast forward 50 years later, I come across this treasure trove of letters, and my mom's living with me. I'm trying to rally her long-term memory because she has dementia. And I was very naive at the time, thinking I could reverse the signs of dementia if I just, work out that muscle. Right. And so I said, let me go get those letters, that I had found from Operation Morale Booster. And we started going through them. And not only did she have portals of recall from time to time, where she would then have such clarity as to what was going on when that letter was, being written and whatnot. But I got to now read all these letters, not just from Bob Johnson, who I have 77 letters just from him, but all these other soldiers. And it was really so unique to be in the front lines of that war, which we know little about, probably the war we know least about. Right. Because these men and women, but mostly men, were shamed into silence when they came back. So here's your frontline information, and you're hearing their thoughts in real time. It's not like interviewing them now, 50 years later, where their memory has faded. So think of this, that it's been compared to the discovery of Anne Frank's diary, which was 2 years of her writing to herself during wartime of something we knew a little bit about. This is similar, not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, look at the gravity of that, the discovery. But this is 7 years of back and forth of during wartime, you know, of a war we know little bit about in the population. We don't know a lot about those soldiers because they came back and they were shunned and they were demonized. They were the scapegoat for the political war that was going on. So, and when I say dialogue, my mom had the wherewithal with 4 children running around. She had the wherewithal to attach her carbon copy responses to each of the incoming letters.
Mm.
So she did that so she'd stay organized, and she knew what they were answering because she had a lot of people she was writing to. So to
Right.
stay organized, she would attach it so she would know what what she asked them, so what they're responding to. And she also would keep index cards of each of the soldiers she wrote to with pertinent information. So she'd have like his parents' name or his girlfriend's name or his birthday, anything to keep his letters personal, so that it would give him a respite from the jungle, so that he would be talking about and reading about his family and his home. So she was very intentional and very thoughtful in her correspondence. And
Is that her on the cover of the book?
it is. Yeah.
That her? Yeah.
Yep. That's my mama.
Wow.
She was a TWA stewardess prior to getting married and having children. And so
What was her name?
Joan Hunter, Joan Marie Hunter.
Joan. Mm.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Is that not an amazing discovery to be going through the boxes and then all of a sudden you see that she kept all of these? People did that at that time. They wrote and they kept these letters
And they were in
in
pristine
boxes.
condition. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very special thing.
Yeah.
And this was a pen pal situation, right?
Yeah. So there's something to be said for like handwritten letters.
Yes. Did you have I had a pen pal actually when I was a kid. There was a show on PBS with my affiliation with public television, and it was called Big Blue Marble. And at the very end, it was like a kid's show. And at the very end, they used to say, if you would like to have a pen pal, write to us and we'll connect you with a pen pal. And there was this girl that, we wrote back and forth, and I still actually have all the letters. And we've communicated since, because we're older now. She still has all of the letters, and she was in France. So it was really, really cool for her to get a letter from the United States, and for me to be getting the letter from her from France.
I think you need to have her on one of your shows.
That would be cool to talk about that whole experience of the pen pal thing. Did you have a pen pal as a kid?
I did. I had a pen pal for a short time. Actually, ironically now, it was a pen pal. She was in California, but she was from Vietnam, which I'm actually only just recalling how
connection
is that. She probably came over from Vietnam after the war as one of the refugees. I don't have her letters anymore. Win Wong was her name, I think.
Wow.
But yeah, so I get an email from a reader at least one a day, and mostly veterans, but not all. But this book has inspired people to go up to their attic to pull down their letters and start reading through them.
Right.
And it is a treasure. It is a treasure. And the other thing is, back then during that war, those soldiers felt very isolated because there was a pretty large period of time where the country wasn't even behind them. So they felt very much on their own. And
they weren't really welcomed home, or not like World War II.
And over there, they didn't even, it was hard to tell who their enemy was because they were friendly during the day, working out in the rice paddies with them. And then at night, they're fighting them. So they felt very alone, and they kind of became very tight brotherhood. Even probably tighter than most, even in battle, which, I would imagine in battle, you become very tight. But so when they got a letter from home, someone they loved, their world stopped. And I've had soldiers, veterans now, send me pictures of them where they're sitting there in a bunker reading their letter, and you see explosions going off behind them. They don't care. Their world stopped, and they were all about every word on that letter. So those letters are so precious to them.
When
And
you were reading them, so you can include these in the book, was it hitting you emotionally too? Were you affected mentally and physically by what you were reading? These are people's lives. They're sharing their experiences in a very precarious situation, and here they're expressing themselves. It must have touched you in a way that also helped you propel this must do this project sort of passion, right?
great insight. It sure did. I mean, there were so many elements as to why. Now, I did not know anything about the Vietnam War. I was born during the war. And of course, the schools didn't teach you anything about the Vietnam War. So I knew nothing about it. And so, for one, it gave me insight as to, wow, this is how the soldiers feel. This is what they actually went through. I mean, they talk about operations. They talk about everything.
Yeah,
But then, so it really, pricked my heart in their regard for the Vietnam veterans, for their plight, because then I started immersing myself in all things Vietnam War, and then I saw how poorly they were treated, and that is a real stain in our country, and how things have never changed. Like, I mean, things have changed. We'll never disrespect a returning soldier again. We learned from the Vietnam veterans, but for many of them, it was 35 years or more since before they got a welcome home, before they got a
right.
thank you for your service. But the added thing is, so I don't know if you've noticed. Okay, so my mom's white, my family's white. Bob Johnson is black. So when I first started on this journey, I was really laser focused on the plight of the Vietnam veteran. I kind of didn't even just because it wasn't a thing growing up for me. I grew up in the North, and things were different than they were in the South. And
Where did you
that
grow
really,
up?
I grew up in Situate, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
the New England. And
yeah.
so there was times that I was telling the story when, before I started writing the book, and I would totally forget to even mention, oh, Bob's black, my mom's white, in the diversity there, because to me, that was just never a thing. But of course, with the summer of 2020, hearing all the hurt that was going on, and things were surfacing, then it became an added sense of urgency, because I wanted, we were being told that, we're not a perfect nation. There is no perfect nation. And I get that. We're made up of 320 imperfect human beings. So we will never be perfect, but we do strive to be more perfect. A more perfect union is what we strive to be. But we were also being told we are the most racist country on the globe. And respectfully, I disagree with that. And I felt I had proof, because the letters now, so talking about getting emotional, the letters in here between my mom and Bob, now granted, from the get-go, neither one of them had a bias against each other. So therefore, they spoke very openly to each other and didn't necessarily agree on everything, but they spoke with respect to each other. But it was hard for me at times to read some of the letters between the two, because, like, for instance, my mom wrote to Bob, and this is in 66. So this is I was born in 67, but pretty much in my short lifetime, this is where we were, and we all know where we are now. But in 66, she wrote to Bob saying, Bob, you'll be happy to know the networks are now spending 5 hours a week dedicated to teaching us about the Black community. Now, when I read that, I felt like I got punched in the stomach. Like, what, Mom? Like, it was hard for me to even read my sweet mom saying something like that, even though there was nothing derogatory about what she was saying. That was just the way it was back then. So it was a real learning experience for me. Like, I thought we had evolved long before I was born. I didn't realize how current things were, in the sense that, this is the 60s and we needed to be educated. But the reason I point this out, because to me, that was just so mind blowing, that happened in 66. And now we are in a country where we're the most diverse country on the globe. And we still have to work on that, because we are so diverse. But there's not a job in this country that you can't get because of the color of your skin. So we have come a long way, and I think we need to focus in on that, like how far we've come, and continue to move forward instead of, harping on where we were or what have you, and dividing us even more. So
How
that became
has
a second mission.
Yeah, and the whole thing is so tied together in such
Mhm.
an incredible way as part of this mission, this vision, this passion. How has this project, this ongoing project, changed you, changed your perspective, changed maybe your views, or just changed your life in such an extraordinary and profound way, Susan?
Well, I will say it totally changed me in the sense that I now work for a different currency. I work in the economy of God. Um, Maybe too spiritual for some to understand, and you don't have to be a believer or come alongside me on it, but just, I guess, be grateful that that is what motivates me, because a lot of good is coming from what I'm doing. A lot of hearts have been healed. I literally had the president of the Tennessee State Council for Vietnam Veterans of America write me this week after he read my book, and then he came to the play, which premiered 2 weekends ago here in Nashville. And he thanked me for both the play and the book, and essentially said, it's like a counseling session. And 77 letters is the counseling session that is finally worked. And so for me, that was kind of the juxtaposition between the poignancy and the joy in that statement of his. Really, kind of is the microcosm of everything that I'm doing. I mean, it's sad that nobody, or the healing hasn't been widespread, and yet here these men are in their 70s. But at the same time, the joy is, wow, thank you, Lord, for giving me and using me as an instrument to bring some healing to these men and these families, before he calls any more home, because they have been wronged in an egregious way. And so if I can be a conduit for any healing, to me, that's what I'm working for. That's my currency. And so, yeah, it has changed me profoundly. And I do this. This is all independent and independently sourced,
Right.
and funded. But the Lord has always provided in one way or another. It's a walk of faith, and it's been the most rewarding mission I've ever been on, and it's changed me completely.
Mm, mm.
I mean, I've
That's
always been a volunteer and all that, but this is touching hearts and souls and healing generations. So when you read the book, and I do encourage your listeners to read the book, it's a quick read. It's a true story, and it's jaw dropping. And when you read it and you see, I bill this as the best father-daughter redemption ever. And it's important because they are passing. Right now, we only have about less than 1/3 of those veterans who served in country in Vietnam are still with us. They're dying at a faster rate than any other population of veterans because the Agent Orange is wreaking havoc on them, the toxins that they were exposed to, and it is really just ravaging the lives. We've lost about 325,000 of our veterans to Agent Orange. So it is important that we connect with these men and women, and there are many women who serve there, and I interview them in my documentary series as well. That's another whole thing, another whole project that has spawned from this. But we need to get to them. We need to get to every Vietnam veteran and their family members, because they have been wronged as well, and they have hurt tremendously. And so we need to do it as a country. We need to reach out to them and talk to them and hear their story. And I'll tell you, even just letting them speak and you hear them with a genuine heart, you
Yeah.
see the healing take place right in front of your eyes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's become like an
Yeah.
addiction for me, to be honest with you. A
Yeah.
healthy addiction, but an
Right.
addiction.
Right. Right. Exactly. As you're helping people, sort of, it's therapeutic, cathartic, healing on many different levels, and also eye-opening and revealing too.
Yeah.
Maybe people have certain feelings or images about that time period and that event, but now it becomes humanized. There's a humanistic connection made
Yeah.
through your writing, through the letters, and through the whole storytelling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely honor restoring, that's for sure, and healing. And it's something that, you know, everybody walks away, even if you're not a veteran, even if you're not a military family, you walk away from either the play or the book enhanced. You're enhanced. So you either have a better understanding as to what they went through. It's also you have a different vision. So Hollywood tends to depict Vietnam veterans and the soldier, you know, soldiers when they were soldiers and now veterans, in a certain way, and they do it every time. Like, for instance, every movie has Vietnam soldiers, you know, getting high and, you know, doing things like that. And the fact of the matter is that wasn't everybody, especially the people up front. They weren't doing that stuff. They weren't even drinking because they had to have their wits about them. So, you know, I am stepping up, and I've had Hollywood say, no, you need to, they all smoked reefers and all that. And I'm like, no, they all didn't. I've interviewed them. I've traveled the country interviewing them. And I know, and even in the letters that Bob wrote to my mom, he didn't touch that stuff. In fact, he didn't start drinking any alcohol until he was put in the rear because he was injured. And so they put him in the rear, so in a desk job, and that drove him crazy to be in a place of safety in doing a desk job, watching the numbers, the reports of different battles and operations, and the reports coming back with, you know, him seeing some of his men have died, were killed in action. So that drove him to drink. And in one of his letters, he even says, yeah, I drank more in the last 2 months here in the rear than I did my first 2 years in Vietnam up front. He's like, I need to get back up there. He's like, I don't like it back here. And so no, not everybody drank, not everybody smoked pot. And so part of what I'm doing is I'm stepping forward and saying, I want to depict it for reality. Yeah, maybe that did go on. For sure that went on in some areas, but not every area. So I am speaking for those people, and I am depicting the Vietnam for many of the people that I've interviewed, and certainly, you know, that I know just didn't partake in that they couldn't have. You're right there in the front lines. You can't be participating in that stuff. So I am being, I look at it as brave, because Hollywood always likes to have conflict and tension and all these things. In fact, when I was first talking to people in Hollywood about this book, they were kind of, well, was there romantic? You got to have some romantic tension between Bob and my mom, or you got to have some jealousy between your dad and your mom. And I'm like, yeah, but that didn't happen. So no, I'm not going to do that.
Like a Lifetime movie or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's enough tension in the fact that, one, she's white, he's black, and they're not that there's tension, but that would be tension for other people at that time. Like,
Especially
there
at
was
that
tension
time period.
at
Yeah.
that time, right? Other people, maybe there was someone in my mom, and I talk about it in the book, someone who disapproved of my mom's behavior. And you see her, this non-confrontational woman, my mom, you know, she got her feathers ruffled up, and she put Mrs. Nebnose in her place. But there was also tension in the war, in the conflicts that Bob was having to deal with, and these other soldiers. But it's a beautiful story. And that's the other thing, you know, my dad was very supportive of my mom with this operation. In fact, he got his students, he was a high school U.S. history teacher of all boys schools. So these were the next sea of conscripts. So he got them involved to write directly to the soldiers so that they could get their questions answered, so they were better prepared for what they were going to be walking into. He was very supportive. In fact, he came to visit. So on one of Bob Johnson's stateside leaves, he came to visit and stayed the weekend with us. So my father welcomed that. They had this mutual admiration thing going on, the two men, and it was a beautiful thing. And I wasn't going to taint that. In fact, I want to showcase that, because we have a lot of examples out there. We're barraged with examples of conflict and tension and dysfunctionality. And I think it's okay for us to have a healthy balance of other situations, other family lives that weren't dysfunctional, and it had supportive, spouses, even in something that would normally be a little tension. I mean, I even think of it today. Wow, good for you, Dad. I mean, he rest in peace. But good for him for being that confident in the relationship that he would allow his wife to write to 40 different men, and he would allow this one man to come visit and spend the weekend with us. So good for him for being that confident in the relationship. But quite honestly, my mom adored my dad, and she wrote about my dad in every letter. So none of the soldiers that wrote to her ever got the wrong impression that she was there as a romantic companion, or that she was doing it at the expense of, giving attention to her husband. She made that quite clear that no, Paul's supportive of this. He was in the National Guard, but he was 30, so he was too old to serve, and he was a father of 4. So they had this respect for my mom. There was one gentleman that actually wrote to her and said something like, signed it off with like love, whatever. And she just like kind of slapped him on the hand at the beginning of the next letter, kind of like, no. So it was cute, but
We have this really cool clip here, and I think it's from a Zoom conversation. Tell us about this, and we'll show it for our viewers.
Okay, sure. So I had been told about this contest for writing a manuscript. It could be either a manuscript or a screenplay. And so I submitted part of my manuscript of 77 letters, and I was getting a call, which I thought I was getting a call to get more information about my manuscript. So when I got on the call, much to my surprise, on the other end of this Zoom call was Jeff Arch, the screenwriter of the most iconic romantic comedy, Sleepless in Seattle. He was on the other end of this Zoom call. And so I thought, wow, this is pretty impressive. And then he proceeded to tell me that I won the scholarship for a week mentorship with Jeff Arch, Tab Murphy, one of the most prolific screenwriters in Hollywood, right, still today, David Paul Kirkpatrick, who was the head of this whole Story Summit group. He was president of Paramount Pictures for most of his career. He's since retired, and now he's started the Story Summit. You can find it at storysummit.us, I believe. And he is now helping the next sea of writers promote their work and get them to a level of honing in on their skill set. Anyway, so I got on this call with Jeff Arch, and he was raving about the story. And he, again, told me that I won the scholarship. So I was a little emotional, for some of the clip. But yeah, so he sees this as huge. He's at one point, he says, this is like the spokes of a wheel. It can go in all different directions, which it has. So it's the book. And then he actually the stage play was his brainchild. He was the one that came up with the idea of, I see this on stage. And he equated it to Love Letters of like 1988, which is still played around the nation right now, Love Letters. And so he kind of put it in my head about thinking about stage as a format to tell the story. So soon after writing the book, that was my next mission, is to find a director who would take on this speculative project and help me bring it to stage. But yeah, so you have the video of Jeff Arch just talking about how big this is. And of course, we're already talking about, making this into a film, actually toggling back and forth. Do we want to make it a standalone film, or do we want to make this like a 2 to 3 season TV series? There's just that much to unpack in it. So I think everybody's kind of leaning toward the TV series, and it's going to be super dynamic and bold, because I'm bold. But it's also, it needs to be shared. All the stories in here.
Let's share that conversation. We have the exclusive clip here to share with all of you on the Jim Masters Show. If you're just joining us, welcome everybody. I'm your host, Jim Masters. We are here on our Entertainment Lifestyle Variety Talk Show series, welcoming everybody tuned in from around the world. If you're enjoying the conversation, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. It doesn't cost anything to do that. If you want to comment in the Lovity chat room, you can do that during the airing of the show. And give this episode a like and leave a comment on our YouTube channel as well. Very special guest, award-winning author and documentarian and screenwriter Susan P. Hunter is here, coming to us from the greater Nashville, Tennessee area. And now we're going to take a look at this really cool clip and conversation. You can hear the passion in Susan's voice when she talks about this opportunity. And here this is.
Unfortunately, most people have less than what they think they have. You have more than what you think you have. There's more here that, who knows? There's a much bigger picture to hold this whole thing than what you're seeing. I think you're hinting at it, but there's a much bigger picture at what you've done. And so you really grew up with a mother who did this.
Yes.
So, I mean, what was that feeling like as he was already giving several thumbs up to the whole project, the whole idea?
Yeah, it was surreal, just because I felt like, wow, one, I just happened upon it. And then I also kind of said, wow, here I felt like perhaps I was tested along the way. Would I do the right thing and go up to my mom's house to help clean up the attic so she wouldn't have to go up there after my dad had passed? And I felt like I passed that test, and that's what had me find the letters. And then I feel like maybe I was tested, and would I take her to come live with me? I mean, that meant I put my whole life on hold because she had dementia and she needed 24/7 care. And I did, but that's in answering that call, that's what led me to even read through these letters. So I kind of felt like, wow, this has organically happened. And also it validated my mom's mission, that here Hollywood was saying, you got yourself a gem of a story. And this is way bigger than you think. And so to me, that was another beauty and a gift I got in delving into this whole mission and reading the letters and writing the book. I got to see a whole new side of my mom. She was content in my dad's shadow, and so therefore I always felt like he was the strong one. He was the only strong one. And then come to find out, my mom was incredibly strong for what she did, incredibly thoughtful. And she left this legacy of kindness that I hope goes global, because, here's one person just writing letters, a simple act of kindness. And here it is 50 years later, still impacting people. And this book has been sold in 4 different countries. So I do intend to ensure that this goes global. Because if, we're all, we're called to love each other.
Yes.
Right? But that can be hard. That can be hard. We're humans, but it shouldn't be hard for us to be kind to one another.
Exactly.
And I think if if we can get that message out, that would be a legacy that will, she just passed 2 months ago, but it will long outlive her. It will go on and on. And that
did she know you were doing this? Was she aware that you were? That's great.
She was. In fact, dementia is a beast of a disease, and it strips you of your memory. But I will say, to the very last day, she knew Bob, and all I would have to say is Bob, and she would say Johnson. And so there was I call them spiritual soulmates. There was a connection there. And so she knew, because in the beginning, I took the letters out and I was reading them with her, and we were talking about that time frame and the letters and all the things. And then, shortly after that, she was declining. But also, this is a cool thing that for your audience. Now, this was 4 years ago. My mom was still fluid. She was still able to read. This is before I even was writing the book. I was moved to have my mom read one of Bob Johnson's poems. He was also a poet. And it's a beautiful poem called A Country's Call. And I had my mom read it. Don't know why I was inspired to do so at the time. This is before I was even writing the book or even thought that I was going to write this a book. but I am so glad I did, because I incorporated that into the stage play. And it's very powerful when you're hearing the woman who started this whole thing reciting his poem. And I'm just so grateful that I was moved to do so, because it's something I will forever cherish. And Bob cherishes to hear my mom's voice, who now is no longer here, reading his poem and having it in this play. And we have a few different things like that are just so personal, that makes this play an experience. It's not just like, oh, good story, good show. You walk out of this play feeling moved, feeling like I'm going to be talking about this play years from now, because of all the intimacy of the letters, of the things that we were able to incorporate into the play. And it's just, I wanted it to be an experience. I wanted it to be something that, what my mentors, these Jeff Arch and Tab Murphy and David Kirkpatrick, they said, it's one thing. Actually, this one came from Michael Jamin, another successful screenwriter that I take his course, and he's one of my mentors. He said, it's one thing to move an audience when they're right there watching your play or right there reading your book. That's one thing. It's quite another thing to have them so moved that they're still talking about your work months and years later.
Right.
And he said, that's what you want to shoot for. And so that's kind of what I do shoot for. I want people to be moved. I want to prick the heart. I want to change. I want to make a change. And it can start with just each and every individual making a small change. And if it's that they just go talk to a veteran. Every time I post about this, I'll always hashtag Bravest Generation and hashtag talk to a veteran. Talk to them, because in talking to them, it's going to enhance your life, but it's also going to help them heal, help them feel validated.
So what's happening with the play itself? Is the play touring now? Are there more dates, things coming, especially with the new year happening? Tell us about the play and opportunities maybe for people to see it too.
Yeah. Well, the play was a resounding success.
Yeah.
So
Sold out performances.
Yep. 3 performances, and 2 of them were sold out. And the matinee, the 2 evening performances were sold out. The matinee was about 3/4 full. And just the reviews afterward have just been, again, it's the currency. It's everything. It's gold. And so now where we go from here, that was kind of a test run. Let's see how this goes. So now we're actually applying for a grant to fund this. And we're going to reach out to the Vietnam Veterans of America to see if they will fund this, and we will take it on tour for the next year. And we want to hit all the major cities, all the cities that are heavily veteran populated, and we want to touch as many. And we're just going to take 1 year at a time. So it is expected to go on tour. I don't have any dates thus far because we need to get the funding. Got
to get it all together, right? Yeah.
It's one thing for me to work for free, but actors and tech crew and I don't want anybody working for free.
But it's good you got that. It's good you have that finance background under your belt, so you know how to really put it together where it's effective in terms of the efficiency of the spending for the projects, which I think is fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
It's a
it
bonus.
Has to be sustainable. It has to be sustainable. So we have to be realistic about it. Again, I feel like, the Lord has been, grooming me all along, giving me a little bit of, finance and budgeting, and give me a little bit of the writing and the filmmaking and arts. So I was never an actor. I can't do that, but I was a dancer. So I was up on stage a lot. But I also did like props manager. So I did some work in theater, but behind the scenes, not in front acting. So anyway, I just feel like, little bits here and there, it's all culminating now as to, okay, this is where, you had me planned for, Jeremiah 29:11, right? He knows the plans he has for us. I didn't know, but
he sure did. Right. Exactly.
Sure did.
We've got some cool photos here we want to show. Maybe you can tell us what we're taking a look at here, Susan.
Yeah, so that is Bob. That's the gentleman, Richie Acevedo, playing Bob Johnson on the left, and Craig Cartwright is the gentleman on the right playing Missouri. They have a beautiful story within the story, and so there's just a really poignant moment where they're having a conversation. during the stage play. Okay, that is Carissa Wheeler. She's Miss Middle Tennessee. She's a lovely young woman. She was cast as Young Joan. And so the two of us were invited on to NBC today in Nashville to talk about the stage play. And that's us in the green room. And that is Melody Johnson. So that is the only daughter of Bob and Pak Sun Johnson. And her story is jaw-dropping. In fact, she was adopted during the war, which is another jaw-dropping story. It's not a normal adoption, but it's the redemption that happened between her and her dad that I said to her when it all happened, and I don't want to give it away for your audience because it really is the best father-daughter redemption story ever. But when it happened, I said, you know what? I said, you know what just happened here, Melody? And she said, no, what? I said, this story doesn't end with my mom and your dad. You are now a part of the story. And telling your story is going to heal countless hearts, souls, and relationships. So we have to get this out to the masses, in one way or another, one format or another, or all of them, which is what I'm choosing. This is Josh Dioloso. He is cast as Paul, my dad, who was a U.S. history teacher. And this is during the stage play, and he's reading a letter to his class. So that's during the stage play. And then this is my reunion with Bob Johnson and Pak Sun Johnson. And interesting with him. So I met him, and you'll read it in the book. I met him when I was 18 months old, when he came for that stateside leave, and he came to visit us for the weekend. And there's a beautiful story in here about when he did come to visit. My mom took him sightseeing because we lived in a coastal town, near Plymouth Rock, Plymouth, Mass.
Oh, yeah.
So, we did the whole touristy thing, and he carried me when I was 18 months old. He carried me around Plymouth, and, my mom and Bob didn't see anything about it. Here's a white woman, black man carrying a white child. They look like a family.
Yeah.
And, they didn't think anything of it. And, but then they came in contact with somebody in Plymouth, and I write about it in the story, where there was a little tension. But that was the last time I saw him. And then when I uncovered these letters, I reached out to him. He then sent the letters to his daughter. And so now I have this connection with him, but he never would let me come see him. And for a year, they told me that he couldn't be audibly understood because of a couple strokes. And so therefore, he was uncomfortable even getting on the phone with me. Or he wouldn't get on the phone with me because I wouldn't be able to understand him. So I respected that. And okay, so for the first year, I only communicated with his daughter. And I just thought, okay, he can't communicate with me. Well, then a year later, where I had connected him to one of his good buddies from Vietnam, which is another jaw-dropping story. So I have this article that he sent my mom back in '66 of an operation he had been on. In the article, they quote the platoon sergeant, Billy Ray Dansby from Hendersonville, Tennessee. That's right next door to where I am. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go perusing the internet. I find him, and he's still in Tennessee, not next door, but an hour and a half away. So I write to him, and it sure enough, it was him. And that's another whole great story. He gets my letter, and he leaves a message, on his way back in the mailbox. He leaves a message on my phone saying, Susan, this is Billy Ray Dansby of the 2nd 7 Cav. If this is the Bob Johnson I think you're referring to him, I know him quite well, and I look forward to talking to you. Boom. And it was just like a drill sergeant. I'm like, wow, I feel like I was just reprimanded.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a win. It was a win. He connected with me. So I drove down there, spent 5 hours with him. And then in talking to him, I wrote to Bob telling him I just spent 5 hours with Bill Dansby. Out of all the soldiers Bill Dansby was close with during his time in Vietnam, Bob was the closest to him. So he was astounded that Bob had written so many letters. But anyway, so Bob, hearing that I've been going through all this effort and whatnot, he said to Melody, you know what? I think I'm going to call Susan. She's really working hard on this. Her heart is sincere, and I need to thank her for all this work. So he was really just being very close to the chest and didn't want to talk to me because it was really still vetting me out. So a year later, so then she said, okay, well, don't call her now. Give it a couple hours. And he's like, why? She's like, because I know she's at church right now. And so he loved the fact that Melody even knew I was at church, and he said, "Oh, that's it. I'm definitely calling." And so he called me, and then it was another 2 years before he let me come see him, because he's in Russia. He had lost a leg from some of his quasi-military assignments after the war, and he's had some strokes and all that. So he really was just shy about letting me see him, because he wanted me to keep that image of him as this young virile soldier. And I kept saying, "Bob, please just let me come see you. I just want to hug you. I want to look in your eyes." And so finally, last November, so a year ago last week, he had called and said, "You know what? I know if something happens to me, I'm going to regret if I never saw you again. If you're still interested, I welcome you to come visit." And I was like, "I'll be there on Saturday." And so I drove there on Saturday, and I spent 5 hours with him. It was great.
That's
And
so incredible.
Puck's son is lovely. Puck's son
Oh,
is lovely, and they're still happily married. They're wonderful.
that's so fantastic, huh? To have that opportunity like that. But
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. Here's another
And
shot.
one thing, yeah, that's Bob Johnson in the field on Christmas Day, I think in '68. So that was Christmas Day. He's, that was what he was doing while we're all enjoying a turkey dinner.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
and then that is Carissa playing young Joan, and Greg Wilson playing Mr. Fallon at the general store during the play. That's just a scene when my mom just started writing to the soldiers, and the local general store said, "You know what? I'm not going to write letters, but I'll give you a candy bar for anybody that responds to you. You can send over candy, from the store." So that's that story. But one thing I want to point out in that your earlier, oh, that's a great picture. Yeah, that's opening night. It was sold out, so we sold out both Friday and Saturday night.
Look at that crowd, huh? Phew.
Oh, it was amazing. It
And I
was
imagine
everything.
people would come up to you afterwards and say
Oh,
that they were visibly moved and touched by the stories, because and maybe even started sharing their own personal stories with you as they witnessed this.
they sure did, and they do, and I love it, and I make time for every one of them. So I'm frazzled. Like, I may not get to everybody else, but if you're a Vietnam veteran and you're talking to me, I am laser focused on you.
So there's the book, there's the play, and then possibly a television series, which is really exciting, huh?
Yeah, television series just on this story, just on 77 Letters. Now the documentary series that I'm producing, that's in post-production now. I've interviewed over 120. I have over 120 hours of interviews from all perspectives of that war. So I have the veterans, I have their families, I have some Gold Star families, so the families that lost their loved one, they killed in action. I have the civilians that worked over there. So I have the top CIA analyst, Frank Snepp. I interviewed him. I interviewed the combat photojournalist, the two remaining Pulitzer Prize combat photojournalists from that war, the Vietnamese Nick Ut and the American David Kennelly. I was able to granted interviews with them. I've interviewed Rocky Blyer, 4-time Super Bowl champion, but also Vietnam veteran, and that's why I interviewed him. In fact, at the end of the interview, he was lovely. 2.5 hours, class act. What a guy. At the end, I said, "Am I the only interviewer that didn't ask you about your 4 Super Bowl rings?" And he's paused. He's like, "Yeah, you are." I said, "Good. I'm okay with that."
Right, exactly.
But he gave me some exclusive stories from Vietnam, which I can't believe, because ESPN had done a documentary on him and even paid and brought him back to Vietnam. And some of the stories they left on the editor's floor. And I'm thinking, that to me is the story. I can't
That's the
believe
story
it.
right there. Yeah.
I interviewed Captain Bill Robinson, one of the longest POWs in American history. He was 7.5 years as a prisoner of war in Hanoi Hilton. I've interviewed the MACV-SOG, so the Studies and Observation Group. They were the ones that had to sign a 40-year confidentiality agreement that they wouldn't divulge anything to anyone, not even their spouses, which caused some problems in their marriages when you can't divulge that, but they had to do it. So now that has expired and they're able to talk. But I've interviewed South Vietnamese people. I have all these, harrowing stories and these stories of rescue and valor. And It's just, I interviewed the women of valor. I have a whole series on the women of valor, and that's the nurses that served, the donut dollies, the stewardesses that, you know, were there taking the men to and from Vietnam, and how different those flights were. So I'm really trying to humanize war, so we understand the cost of war, and the real cost is the human cost, and it's generational. It's not just those who served; it's those who came home to, and for the rest of their lives. So, you know, that is my mission. I've even interviewed North Vietnamese, so our then enemy. Because we all realize now that no, we're all just kind of pawns in that war, and things happen, but we're all just want the same thing. And that's one thing I want to point out to your audience. When you do read the book, not to miss out. A lot of people have missed out on the real beauty of the story. So people look at the cover and they say, oh, you know, black and white. Oh, that's the racial thing. That's not. Neither one of them had any biases from the beginning. The beauty and the transformation, and why I've been hired by Macy's and Synchrony Financial to come in and do a diversity and inclusion training springboarded from this book, is because during the war, he's assigned to Korea. He writes to my mom saying, I hate these people with a purple passion, right? And at this point in the book, you already know you like Bob. You've already known him well enough, you like him. You understand why he doesn't like Koreans, because all he knows is he was assigned there after the Korean War, and the people were not so nice to him. So you understand it. You don't like it, but you understand it.
Right.
But it's the transformation that he goes through. He has these terrible biases, but he immerses himself in the culture, learns that they're just like us, want just the same things as us, and he transforms. He ends up marrying a Korean woman. So anyway, that's the beautiful transformation. That's where we can learn from. You know, we can't. Nobody was born with biases.
No,
we're not born
right,
with it.
right. They develop
100%
as
unlearned.
right from exposure and
Yes.
yeah. What are some other cool things you're working on, Susan?
Well, so I have, you know, this documentary series that's super cool and all evolving and encompassing. But I've also written a number of screenplays, and I have the screenplays. Oftentimes, the protagonist is a Vietnam veteran, and what I'm doing is, again, trying to tell their story in different ways. So we will see this protagonist, and I draw from the interviews. So the interviews that I've had with some of the veterans, just to give you an idea, one of the stories that I've written is based on a couple interviews I had with Vietnam veterans that said they didn't come back to nightmares. You know, they came back and they got into the throes of, you know, climbing the corporate ladder, raising a family, and they just never had nightmares until they retired. And then once they retired and the idleness of, you know, retirement set in, that's when the nightmares started, you know, having them spiral out of control. And that shocked the family, because their dad was completely normal for 40, 50 years. And then all of a sudden, or 40 years, and then all of a sudden they're having these nightmares, and they're not able to even sleep in the same bedroom as their wives because they're afraid they're going to hurt their wife. And so I wanted to show that aspect. So we understand that not everybody comes back right away with nightmares. And many Vietnam veterans, this is another thing I wanted to make sure I portray. Many Vietnam veterans are extremely successful. Like Hollywood likes to portray them always as down and out and, you know, homeless and all the things. And yet that is actually a small percentage of the Vietnam veterans. Most of them went on for very productive lives, and many of them are extremely successful. For many reasons they're successful. But anyway, so that's another thing. I really want to balance out how they've been portrayed. So I get there are those who came back and weren't able to assimilate back into civilian life, but majority of them did, and they did successfully. So I also want to show that side of this population too.
Really exciting what's happening, huh? All of this because of these letters found in the box. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's also taken your life into a different trajectory as well, huh?
Yeah, now I'm really just writing, and I mean that's my passion. In fact, you know, I was just saying I think I need to kind of go into a sabbatical
Yeah.
and with social media and all, just so I can write, because I have all these things that I have all these screenplays I need to polish up and start pitching, because in Q1, that's when a lot of these, production companies buy their scripts. So
Yeah.
I gotta get my pipeline going. So
So you got a lot of
um,
writing happening over the holiday season.
yep, yep. So, but it's all good stuff, and I'm just teaming with ideas, and then the other thing is, because I have this relationship with the Vietnam veteran community, they trust me. They tell me these amazing stories, and I mean, I probably have about a dozen amazing screenplays to write based on, the heroic stories that some of my men and women have, experienced over in Vietnam. So, and it's funny. Again, I was born during the war, knew nothing about it prior to these letters, and now
Yeah.
I've carved such a niche as far as being this advocate for Vietnam veterans, that I was actually asked and flown in to Texas, to speak at a celebration of life of a World War II hero who also served in Vietnam. But he was a hero in World War II, literally saved 35 people on an operation, and was even, recommended for a Medal of Honor, and probably should have received it. But anyway, but he passed at the age of 104.
Wow. God
But
bless him.
he,
Huh?
amazing man. And he was also in the Vietnam War he was older at the time, so he was more in charge of the pacification aspect of that war. And so they flew me in to speak at his celebration of life with regards to his involvement in the Vietnam War. This is a gentleman I never met.
Never met, right?
But
Yeah.
they were like, oh, they need to speak as to let's call in Susan and fly her in and have her speak. So it's really just, surreal what is happening. But I just keep walking forward and, okay, Lord, what's happening today? Every day I wake up, what's going to happen today? And I'm ready for anything. The good, bad, the ugly.
Right,
Rather more good.
exactly. But you got the faith grounding, which is your source, and your support, which I think is beautiful. Speaking of that, we have our mutual friend, Billy Gaines, who was a guest on our show, brilliant singer and performer extraordinaire and songwriter. He's wonderful, isn't he, Billy?
He's a great man. I'll tell you, I don't know anybody more proficient in the Bible than Billy Gaines. And he lives the Bible just so genuinely. And he's been a great resource for me, because I'll tell you, I was born and raised Catholic. And I was baptized in the Baptist church just a couple of years ago. But at least in my Catholic upbringing, we did not read the Bible. And so we missed out on a lot, to be honest with you. And so I started getting into the Bible and reading the Bible, and it's kind of addictive. Once you start reading it, you're like, whoa, this is called the good news for a reason. And it is addictive, in a wonderful way. But I also delve real deep. I'm a deep thinker. I never play in the shallow end. I'm always, deep. And so he is a great resource. I will call him or text him and say, okay, well, what about this? And explain this to me, and just for everything in life. So he's kind of given me this, this intensive course on the Bible, where I feel like I've maybe gotten the education of 10 years of studying the Bible in a structured format, just from having him as a resource. But, and you know what, honestly, I think he needs a bigger stage, and his ministry through music is astounding. And his voice is so healing. There's something about his voice, and constantly people are coming up to him saying there's something about his voice that is so moving. But I will tell you, where he really needs to be, I would love to see him be like a counsel for a high level politician, perhaps even like a president of the United States. Like, be a counsel.
That would be fantastic. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
He would be so great.
He just did that big project with Kathy Lee Gifford, which was wonderful. Okay. Yeah. We're hoping to get her to come on the show as well, working on that. But Billy, he was, anybody who didn't see that extraordinary episode of the Jim Masters Show series, Billy was a guest on our show, 2-time Dove award-winning performer and extraordinaire, and one of the nicest guys. And we can't say enough about Billy. And I know he's going to be watching, so we say hello to Billy.
Yeah.
And Yeah, really incredible
Amazing
stuff.
man, amazing
Yeah,
man. He needs a bigger stage. So if any of you are out there have that stage, you'd be hard pressed not to investigate him and vet him out
he's
because
great. Yeah.
he's an asset. That's for sure.
Why do you love what you're doing? What are some of those blessings and joys in your life that propel you to continue this journey that you're on, Susan?
Well, I love connecting with people. I've always been a people person. And like I just mentioned, I dive deep. So I love connecting on a real
Me too.
personal level.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not into chit chat and small talk and all that. I'd rather,
You like to feel it. Yeah.
yeah,
Me too.
that's it.
Yeah.
I like to feel the connection. I like to understand what makes people tick. Like I really
Yes.
do love the diversity of people. And I feel really blessed that I live in a non-judgment zone. Like I haven't
Me
walked, not
too.
only have I not walked a day in anyone else's shoes, I haven't walked every day in anyone else's shoes. So I have no right to judge anybody on anything. I can make observations. I'm not saying I don't see things happening, but I can't judge anybody. So
Correct.
I live in a really great place in my head, you know what I mean? That in my heart, that I don't have like animosity toward people. And if somebody's doing things that perhaps I think is just super destructive or what have you, I have compassion for them and I pray for them. Um, so, but one of the things I love doing, and I designed, again, back to the Vietnam veterans, because they are really residing in my heart and they have become my everything. It's such an incredible population of people when you get to know them. So I designed a challenge coin for them. Welcome home, the bravest generation, on that side with the Huey, and this is the service ribbon from that war. And then on the back is 77 letters. And then the 20 years that's designated as the war, 55 to 75. And then this is the South Vietnamese flag and then the American flag. And so I give these out when I meet a Vietnam veteran. I present it to them, and the challenge coins are really important in the military, and they're becoming important in law enforcement as well. Even some corporations are doing it, but legitimately is more military. And it's an important thing to have. It's really valued and cherished, and there isn't, to my knowledge, and to anybody that I've met thus far, and I've given out about 600 to 700 of these already. There
It's
isn't
beautiful.
one
Yeah.
made for Vietnam veterans specifically. Now, a Vietnam veteran can make one for themselves, to give out as their legacy. But as far as one being made, just broad brushing it for all Vietnam veterans, this is the only one that's made, which shocked me. To me, this was a no-brainer. This is one of the first things I did. But I get to hand these out to these men when I meet them, and they are immediately moved, some
Yeah.
to tears,
Oh, sure.
because they have never been appreciated, never been thanked, never been acknowledged. And
Mm-mm.
and I don't mean to make them cry. I really
No, no,
don't.
no.
I
But
want them
you've,
to
yeah,
feel,
touched
I
their
want,
heart.
yeah, I want to touch them, and I want them to know how special they are, because they truly are. But just to give you an idea, I want to tell you this one story of a veteran that I interviewed, just to show you the gravity of how they were shamed into silence. I interviewed this one gentleman who, he and his wife, you always have that go-to couple that you go out to dinner with the most, right? He and his wife had this go-to couple that they dined together for 14 years. 14 years before the men opened up and shared that they were both Vietnam veterans. 14 years they dined and didn't know he had also served in Vietnam. I mean, that to me blew my mind. That's how shamed into silence they were, that it
Not
took
to
that
mention it.
long,
Right.
So
Where
we need to
people in
break
World
the
War
silence.
II and others were proud to say, I'm in World War II or the
Right.
Korean War or others. Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
the Vietnam War had such a stain on it. And this is another thing. This is another thing I point out in some of my presentations. So now I've interviewed a number of them, and I always ask them, what was your return like? Now, not everybody was spat on. Not everybody had feces thrown on them. Not everybody was called a baby killer, right? They were, enough were that, one too many, but not everyone was. However, because the media barraged us with images, and every movie has this in there, every movie, 100% of those returning soldiers felt the effects of that. And the reason I point it out is because I feel like we need to make, as we the people, we need to make media more accountable for what they put out there and what they're barraging us with. And when you plaster these images out there, we're all being affected by it. And so 100% of those returning soldiers essentially was spat on, was thrown feces on them, and was called awful things, because that's all we see on that's all we saw in the media, and that's all we see in Hollywood, in the movies. I shouldn't just say Hollywood, but in the movies, we always see the same images. Yeah, we get it, that happened, but it didn't happen to everybody. But unfortunately, because that's all we see, it essentially happened to everybody, because they're very communal. Again, during that war, their country wasn't behind them. They didn't even know who their enemy was. The South Vietnamese government, that was a little bit shaky, and all the things. So they were there for each other. They made a pact to each other. We're taking you home. We're going home together. I'm not going home without you. And so they're extremely communal. And they've had to band together even afterwards. They had to band together to fight the whole acknowledgement that the Agent Orange, the chemicals, are causing 17 of their illnesses. So they had to band together to fight that.
Yeah.
And because of their work, now the Gulf veterans are getting coverage for the burn pits and all that. So these Vietnam veterans have done so much. This country has so much to thank them for. They just continue to fight for us.
Absolutely.
And one thing I will say, I'm sorry, I'm just charging my phone.
Yeah, that's great. We love when we get a little tour of, tell us about the room you're in. There's your Christmas tree. Tell us.
Yeah, my Christmas tree and all my nutcrackers. Look at my collection of nutcrackers. I got all these. But I will show you this. This is right there. That's a folded flag. There we go. A folded flag my Marine friends out in California sent me when my mom passed a couple months ago. They sent it to me and they said, our brothers and sisters are buried under this flag, and we consider your mom our sister. And so they wanted her to have a folded flag. So isn't that sweet?
How fantastic and beautiful and meaningful is that, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
Especially, this time of the year, thinking about those who are no longer with us and celebrating, achievement and just celebrating life, especially during the holiday time and with the new year and all. It's a beautiful time to remember and to celebrate life and how precious and short it is and how important it is, and to express kindness and empathy, not just during the holidays, but every day of your life, because it's a gift that we're even breathing. If you wake up, that's a gift you've won already. If you wake up from your sleep and you're breathing, you've won. You've won.
You're already a W for the day. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have over my headboard, I have greet each day with a grateful heart.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
And it just makes life easier. And look, life is hard.
Yes,
life is hard for everybody. Even if someone has a smile on their face, I can guarantee you life is still hard for them.
There's still a lot, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
But, you can do things to make it easier. And doing something that you're passionate about and feeling purpose.
Very important. And that connects with people. And if you love it, it's not even work. It's just flowing out of you, which is really, how I look at my work, and I know how you look at your work. So we're blessed to be doing things that, we're trained to do, that we've put the time and got the education on and everything else, but that we absolutely love doing, and is a reflection really of who we are as people. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you tap into that and you express it and you share it, because it can be very inspiring to others as well, as they're thinking about their world. So, and that's what you're doing truly with this extraordinary body of work that you have been sharing with everybody. And we encourage folks, they can go to your site, which is right here. We've got it on the screen, susanhunterbooks.com. Is it also available? Is the book on Amazon and all the other usual places, Barnes and Noble?
Amazon, excuse me, Amazon is the best place to get it.
Yeah.
But also, I encourage the your excuse me,
It gets
your
you all
audience.
choked up. It's so
I know.
emotional.
I encourage your audience to check out on Facebook. I have a couple of pages, 77 letters, a Facebook page for that, and you can kind of
Yeah,
follow the different things that have occurred. Also,
that's
for the
great.
documentary series, I started a page called Every Time the Wind Blew, and that title is one of the titles of of one of my episodes. That was actually going to be the only episode. I was only going to do one episode, but it has evolved and taken on a life of its own, where now I have about 27 episodes.
It sounds
So
like me with this show. I was
right,
just turned on the cameras and started talking 2.5 years ago, and we're now almost 900
right,
episodes.
amazing.
And
And
it's people ask, "Are you going to keep doing it?" And I'm like, "Sure, as long as you're there and you're connecting and having a good time with us."
well,
Absolutely, yeah.
it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, because you're allowing people to just be exposed to all the different stories out there, and you never know what's going to inspire somebody else, or you never know what's, your interview with somebody might be heard by somebody who can then, you know, further that mission of whoever. Like right now, maybe one of your listeners will be a counsel to a president and say, you know what, we need to go hire Billy Gaines to go to be that counsel, or maybe they want to fund. Maybe they love Vietnam veterans as much as I do, and they want to help fund this so that this can get done quicker. I would love to have a team of editors. I would love to have a team of editors that I could hire and get these episodes out ASAP, as opposed to me doing it, and have it take, a year or two to get these episodes out. But yeah, so what you're doing is a wonderful thing, and I appreciate your interest and your time and your passion on really just connecting with people.
Well, the pleasure is absolutely all mine, Susan, and I hope the show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you.
I sure did. And again, I apologize. My laptop did not behave. But I'm glad you suggested the phone. I would not have thought of that. So
Yes,
I'm glad you
we have
did.
learned for some people that's always a good backup. For some reason, their phones, there it is. You
Yeah,
wouldn't think,
it's a
that the
tool,
phone would be
man.
able to
Yeah.
pull it off, a live show like this and everything. But there you are, with all of your passion and enthusiasm for life and your inspiring way. And we've
I
got a lot of
appreciate it.
family in New England. My mother's originally from Connecticut, and she's the youngest of 16. A
Oh
lot
my
of
goodness.
family in Connecticut, Massachusetts, all
Okay.
where you were talking about
Yeah.
Duxbury, Plymouth, Boston, Brookline, Fitchburg, Ashburnham, you name it,
Oh
all,
wow.
all
You got
throughout.
the north, the south, the west. You
It's
got it
all
all.
there, and throughout Connecticut as well, and throughout New England, and my dad, the New York side. And yeah, I don't hear the accent. Did you lost the pack the car?
I never had it, and it's really funny. I don't know why I escaped it, but I did, and I didn't even notice my family had it until I was in New Jersey. I had
Right.
left, so when I was like 25, I left and went to New Jersey, and I had a son named Mark, and I went back home with him, and all of a sudden they're called Mark, Mark, and I'm like,
Mac,
what? Where did this come from? And
Mac,
they're like,
yeah,
no, this is Mark.
Mac,
But
yeah.
I escaped it.
Mac is on Cape Cod.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm kind of glad. I like being nondescript.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
believe it or not, I liked being under the radar. Like this,
Yeah.
everything I'm doing now has put me out in the forefront, and my comfort zone is like
Is really to
miles
be
beyond where it
behind the
was.
scenes.
Yeah,
Yes, but
normally, but
you've got that New England pride and that Yankee ingenuity and that can-do New England spirit. I think that is within you that causes you to also propel forward in this way and share the enthusiasm you have for these stories with everybody else, which I think is fantastic. We're going to keep the porch light on for you, Susan. Spread the word about the Jim Masters show like Billy did, which we
sure will.
appreciate. If you know other folks you think would like to pop on, what we do here is we don't even call these interviews. We call these conversations, sort of like Dick Cavett, Johnny Carson. Warm, fun, conversational, engaging. We thank all the viewers as well and their activity, and we'll keep that light on for you. You're welcome back anytime.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. As
That-
Billy said it would be.
Oh, I appreciate him. SusanHunterBooks.com. Also Amazon as well, everybody, to get the book. And keep an eye out, of course, for the play. If it ends up in a city near you, definitely run, get those tickets. We'll keep abreast too of the TV series and other documentaries and things that Susan is working on. You're the best. Thanks. And a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family as well, Susan.
Thank you. And to you as well. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. You take care and be well, okay? Thanks for
Okay, you too.
joining us.
All right. God
Bye-bye now.
bless. All right. Bye-bye now.
Susan P. Hunter here on the Jim Masters Show. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. Wasn't it fantastic? Got an opportunity to learn about her passion and enthusiasm for life, what she does. And you probably didn't even realize she had that finance background before. Then she finds the box with all these letters that were her mother's, that her mother saved and preserved. And look what has happened. Sometimes you should go up in the attic and go into the basement and dig through the boxes. And, if a loved one passes and you get handed boxes of things that were theirs, cherish them. I've had that happen, with aunts and uncles, different relatives, where some of the things have come down my way. And I cherish those. And there are nuggets. There's little, not only things about your own family you can learn, but also just about that time period, that generation, some of the things that they thought, that they believed in, and some of the news events, which is really incredible. My father has given me his scrapbook of the Brooklyn Dodgers with all of their news clippings and baseball cards, but also my father has given me his scrapbook. When he was a kid, he used to cut out the newspaper articles. He grew up in New York, and of all the things, war, all the things that were going on, which is absolutely incredible. And he and I, we still chat about taking a look at, some of that, which I think is beautiful. And I did the same thing as a kid. I used to cut out all the big stories in the newspapers. And now I have a scrapbook like this of all these articles and all of these. And I have boxes of things, letters I used to write to all the presidents when I was a kid. I used to write to the governors, mayors. I wrote to Mayor Ed Koch in New York. I wrote to Reagan. I wrote to Carter. I wrote to all of them, and have all these letters. And when the governor of Connecticut passed away, Ella Grasso, the first female governor in the United States, I wrote to her family, and she wrote back because we have a family connection in the town where she was from, where my grandfather had a sizable amount of land up in northern Connecticut, north of Hartford, between Hartford, Connecticut, Springfield, Massachusetts. There's a lot of land that my mother's side of the family owned. So a familial connection there. And yeah, I would always write and still have all those letters. I would write to folks when I was in college too, and have all those letters. Still have the letters from the pen pal from France. Patricia Porte was her name. And yeah, just have boxes. That's why we have a climate controlled storage bin we pay monthly for. It has all of those things in it, with lots of records, sealed LPs, reel to reels, my broadcast career, all the tapes and the videos. That's all in there. And lots of photos and 8mm and video, and just going through it with a family member or the family, especially this time of the year, the holidays, we always bring all of that out and take a look at Christmas past. And it's just a beautiful thing. And sometimes you never know about certain things or about people's lives until you ask. I don't know what it was about me, maybe just because I'm a broadcaster. I would always love to sit down and got it on video, and sometimes on an audio cassette, even earlier, before we had a video camera. And I would interview some of our older relatives about what it was like growing up for them, growing up in the Depression and the different times and the things that they experienced. And now we have that material. We have those cassettes, we have those videotapes, we have, they're digitized, and they are blessings because some of those relatives are no longer here, but they spent the time in chatting with me. And, sometimes at first you have to make them comfortable because not everybody always wants to talk about the past, whatever the past may be for them. But when they do, as our guest Susan P. Hunter knows, it becomes a blessing in so many ways. So piece of advice from me and from Susan is, talk to people, gather those stories because they'll enrich your life. And also the people that you're chatting with will feel appreciated and revered for what they've done. And it doesn't even have to just be your family. It could be others that you admire. So, yeah, that's cool stuff. Susan P. Hunter joining us here on the Jim Masters Show. We thank you for joining us as well, watching all around the world. We hope you were inspired, entertained, sort of invigorated by this episode. Check out all the episodes on our YouTube channel, which is Jim Masters TV. Don't forget to subscribe. That really helps us out. Leave a comment for us on the actual YouTube channel underneath this episode. That really helps us too, because YouTube sees that. Their algorithm loves it. And then they blast these episodes out to more people around the world. When you click the thumbs up like, there's a little like button there. Click that. It's on all the episodes. You see the thumbs up. Click that. That really, really helps us. And also leave a comment on the YouTube channel as well. We really appreciate that. And don't forget to hit that red button. It doesn't cost anything. It is subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Once again, we thank Susan for joining us here from Nashville, Tennessee, 77 letters, really an extraordinary project. And you can hear just in the enthusiasm of the conversation, how much she is all in with this. And there's all these other opportunities that are blossoming as a result of her dedication to the task and her desire to tell the story. And with her, the loving memory, of her mother really guiding it. You know what I mean? The love of her mother and the relationship with her mother also guiding this whole thing, which really adds a whole other element to it, a deeper element, which I think is a beautiful thing. So her mother, she's taking her mother with her throughout all of this in a very beautiful way. And I think that's a cool thing. So we love you all. Of course, around here, we don't say goodbye. We say see you later. Buenas noches, hasta la vista, shalom, slancha, sayonara, moriloop. Take care and be well. We don't say goodbyes around here. We say see you later. And we thank you for joining us. Don't forget to love one another, take care of one another, and don't forget to love yourself. Really important to do that. Sometimes I have to remind myself to do that as well. And here we got this. Talk about New England. We brought this back. We used to show this in the earlier episodes of our series. Got this in Newport, Rhode Island, when we were on a family vacation. This was in one of the windows of the shops there. If you've never been to Newport, it's a really cool place. I advise you go. You'll love it. Bring your camera. You're going to want to take a lot of photos. And I said, this is so perfect. Relax. And then you've got like a 1920s, 1930s sort of beach scene there in Newport, Rhode Island. Really, really cool. So don't forget to take time for yourself. I know it's the holiday season. It's tough to relax about now, but if you can take some time to breathe, take time for yourself, be sure and do that. So like, comment, subscribe, share the episode links on your social media. Again, you can find me at Jim Masters TV on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us right here on the Jim Masters Show. We really appreciate it. Continued blessings for the holidays. A very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, and Happy New Year as well. And continue watching all these fabulous episodes that we have for you right here exclusively on the Jim Masters Show. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for all the great comments. That's a blessing as well. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and chatting. A lot of people, we've all become friends of one another, and that is some of the icing on the cake of having created this series 2.5 years ago, hundreds of episodes later. Truly, as we count our blessings during the holidays, I count the blessing of having you with us all the time, as often as you can be, whether you watch live or you watch Memorex, you watch these archived. So you guys be well. Watch for another episode coming up. We always have some good ones for you. And thanks for joining us on this episode of the Jim Masters Show. I'm Jim Masters. Thank you for your time this time. Till next time, we'll see you on the next one. Happy holidays, gang. Cheers.